Let's bring in Eric Steven from SB Nation's True Blue LA blog. Follow him on Twitter at Eric Steven. Eric, we appreciate the time. How are things going tonight for you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, guys.
We got a lot to talk about tonight with this Dodgers team because, as Keith and I were just saying here, basically they've hit the reset button in this divisional race, how things have really kind of shifted a lot in just a month's time. About a month ago, we were talking about the sky was falling with this team, and now they're right back in the thick of it. What's your take, just right off the bat, Eric, on how things have kind of gone these last couple of weeks, and how has the team been able to really put themselves in a spot that they've stayed above ground?
Yeah, it's been a couple of things, I think. One, they're starting to hit a little bit. I mean, they just had a weekend series. It was admittedly at Coors Field, but they scored 33 runs, and it was 10 runs at least in all three games. They've never done that before. But just in general, like Yasiel Puig had no home runs in April, and then he got hurt. He hit a home run tonight. He has like 7 home runs since coming off the DL. He's been one of the hottest sort of hitters since he's come back. Chris Taylor didn't do anything in April. He's been really good basically since May 1st. Cody Bellinger is still slumping a little bit, but then you have like Matt Kemp sort of pacing the offense, Max Muncy coming seemingly out of nowhere. So they have sort of semblance of that like deep lineup. Also, Justin Turner came back. He's been okay. That's helped. That said, the rotation, like 4 opening day starters currently are on the DL, and they've just gotten just basically found ways to fill in. Like Ross Stripling went tonight. He has a 1.52 ERA on the season. It's ridiculous. Like he's really dialed it up here. Like he's just been striking out batters a ton, just really sort of pitching to the scouting report and just been super effective. Kenta Maeda was really good before he went down. Same with Hyun Jin Ryu. That was a while ago. But just they've gotten guys sort of filling in. Also the bullpen, it was a real question mark at the beginning of the year. That it's been sort of normalizing a little bit. So it's been kind of a combination of things. But also the division itself has really come back to earth. Like if the Dodgers win tonight, they'll just be exactly 500. But they entered today only like 2.5 games out. So it's a winnable division. Everyone's just kind of been mediocre. So any kind of a run can put them sort of out in front again.
Hey, Eric, do you think that it was just a lack of focus, or what was it that the Dodgers, why they fell why they were in such a big slump? Do you think it was maybe a lack of focus? Do you think there was probably something going on in the bullpen, is that nature, or was it just the rotation and the injuries?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's probably a mix of both. Like, they were missing Justin Turner, and he was, obviously a very important part of the lineup, basically hitting third most nights, and he just wasn't there, and they weren't getting production out of third base when he was gone. And then Corey Seager had the elbow thing sort of at the end of last season, and it sort of carried over into this season, and he was a little subpar at short, and then he's out for the year. So you basically have your 2 best hitters either not there or not producing. So that's hard to absorb for any offense. But then, it's like I said, like Puig wasn't hitting, Bellinger wasn't hitting. He's sort of slumping as well now too. So I think part of it was injuries, but then part of it was just guys were just in a funk, and like I said, they're starting to come out of it. It's going to take a long time. I think still Bellinger still has some adjustments to make, but they're I think as we get to the trade deadline, they should consider, I know everyone wants to talk about pitching and things like that and what to upgrade, but they could use probably an offensive regular to trade for. They have some flexibility. It could be sort of they can maneuver it to be at different positions, but I think they should consider, trading for an offensive upgrade toward the trade deadline.
Which Dodger would get your all-star vote?
Yeah, I think if you just had to pick one, they might get a few, but I think if you just had to pick one, it's Matt Kemp. He's been a revelation. Before the season, it was when they traded for Matt Kemp, that was a total financial deal. It was all about maneuvering contracts to fit under the luxury tax for this season, and they took on 2 years of Kemp's money for basically the same total amount for 1 year for the Atlanta guys. And there was really, he was a below replacement level player, or roughly a replacement level player the last 3 seasons in total. basically whatever he got on offense, which was roughly league average, he gave back on defense because he was pretty bad and out of shape. And there was, talk that the Dodgers were pretty deep in the outfield. Like they tried to trade him, but they just couldn't find anyone to make a suitable deal. So, like, the fact that he even made it to camp was a surprise. Then he was the opening day left fielder, and then he just kept producing. Like, he showed up in great shape, had a great attitude. Everyone's sort of been really professional about this. They explained everything to him in terms of, we're probably going to try to trade you, and here's what to deal with, and he dealt with it fine. And they've been pretty judicious in using him. They rest him a lot. He doesn't finish every game defensively. But he's been great. I mean, he's among the league leaders in most offensive categories, like batting average as well, but like weighted runs created plus, OPS. He's just been great. And so I think if there's one offensive guy, it's him. Really, Ross Stripling, like I mentioned before, like a .52 ERA. He's getting up there in innings now. He's almost close to qualifying. So if he just keeps that up the next month or so, he's a candidate to be on the All-Star team as well. And that's sort of news because he started the year in the bullpen. He was effective there, but he's just been lights out as a starter. So it's been a really nice story for him.
I want to touch on Matt Kemp, like you said just a few minutes ago, because I thought the same thing. Is Matt Kemp, he's came into shape. He's been like the X factor for the Dodgers. And with that said, do you think it would be a mistake, Eric, for them to actually trade Matt Kemp if that opportunity comes at this moment in time, knowing what he's been doing and how he's been now, and that he's probably the best player right now on the ball club? Would it be a mistake to get rid of Matt?
At this point, like trading Matt Kemp is not something that would happen like in season unless something went horribly wrong. Like let's say they go in some massive slump and basically the season's over, and like if they're under 500 at the end of June or something, or something like that, and then they determine that they're probably not going to contend, and then something comes along where they can get something and relieve some of that contract if they trade him, then they would consider it. But as of now, they can't really afford to trade him. It's something that might happen in the off season as they're maneuvering some other moves, things like that. But as of right now, he's not really going anywhere, I don't think, at least during this season. So, yeah, I don't think it's really much of a consideration at all at this point.
Eric Steven joining us on the line from SB Nation's True Blue LA. How much credit should Dave Roberts receive here, Eric, for keeping this team afloat when there was a couple rumors not too long ago that maybe his job was, if not in jeopardy, he was on the hot seat, let's put it? Look, part of his thing is just sort of being positive through most things and very open door, like communication, that kind of a thing. So he's going to ride out losing streaks pretty well, and just in terms of how he handles things. But obviously, losing takes its toll on anyone, and just to be able to sort of keep everyone focused is an issue, especially when you lose, because things can snowball. That said, I saw some of the some of the rumors that I don't think any of those were true. I mean, there's absolutely no way. Like I joked with someone on Twitter that he would have literally had to stab somebody to get fired this season. Like it's just not feasible. Like they as much as part of the criticisms that Roberts gets is that he's he could be a puppet for the front office. I don't think that's true. That said, the modern game is simply like the manager and the front office are in tandem with each other, and the better the communication and understanding those sides have and can work with each other, the better. And he has a pretty great relationship with the Dodgers front office, and he's in tune with what they want to do. So I think that you want continuity, and you want there to be communication. We saw it sort of evaporate. I'm dating myself a little bit, but like back in 2005, when Jim Tracy was around and Paul DePodesta was a GM, both of those guys did not get along, and it was a toxic environment, and that sort of festered into the team. And they don't have that now. They have sort of cohesion, and that's what you want. And so, short of him being mutinous or something like that, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. That said, he has an option in his contract for next season, and it is a little puzzling. Or maybe it's just their nature. They don't really discuss the negotiations, but he has not been signed to an extension yet. I think that's something you have to sort of consider and get done by this offseason. Because I think, given his performance in the first 2 years, plus this year, we don't know how it's going to play out, but
I think he's warranted a contract extension. He deserves it. So that's something that might come into play this offseason. But as in terms of job security, he's rock solid as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, Eric, now we're looking at the back end of the first half of the season for the Dodgers. Where at the end of the first half of the season, where do they want to end up seeding in terms of in their division? Do they want to be kind of like in the middle of the pack, or is it like they want to be up top, or what would be a good place going into that back end of the first half of the season?
Yeah, I think right now it's probably like if they just keep playing like they're playing, I don't think they're as concerned about where they're at relative to the division. Like they're only 2.5 games out now. So I think if they're in that ballpark, they're probably fine with that. They probably prefer to be a little they're higher or leading the division. But given so many injuries, like Clayton Kershaw going to be out a month, Hyunjin Ryu's like all-star break, Kenta Maeda, not really. He's probably closer to returning. Rich Hill is getting close to returning. So I think like as we get over the next month where the sort of first half sort of ends, I think they're just focusing on getting those 4 pitchers back. And that'll sort of have a trickle-down effect on everything else. So I think it's more health-related than it is performance, although the performance is probably tied to that. So, yeah, I just think if they just keep playing like they're playing, I think they've won like 4 of their last 5 series, and they tied the other ones. If they just keep doing that, just sort of rolling forward, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, for a team who only won 2 series in the first 4 weeks or so of the season, I would say that, things are starting to improve at this point, no doubt. I want to talk about the draft, Eric, for the Dodgers over the last day or two. JT Ginn, their first overall pick in this 2018 MLB draft. He's a right-handed pitcher. Seems like there's a lot of promise for him, obviously. A long way to go. But what are some of your initial thoughts on them drafting Ginn and also some of these other guys, Michael Grove, John Rooney? Some of your thoughts so far on the Dodgers draft picks.
Yeah, it seems like they went, those first 2 picks, they both have a sort of a hard-throwing profile. Both were a little bit odd in their own right. I mean, high school pitcher they don't normally take this early, but, they took Ginn first overall. There was some concern, I guess, because he was used in relief in high school a little bit to start the year. But then I think part of that was just as a sort of to limit his innings there because he ended up starting by the end of the season and was pitching pretty deep in the game. So they plan to use him as a starter, but he's a hard thrower. They like him. But like you said, he's a high schooler. So we're talking now about a guy who's probably not going to have an impact until, say, 2022-ish. So it's a ways down the road just from the nature of the beast. But for Michael Grove, their second rounder, a guy out of West Virginia, he had Tommy John surgery last. I think it was either the end of May or sometime in June. So he's a year out from the surgery. So he's still recovering from that. But he, before the surgery, had outstanding stuff and was one of the guys from Baseball America. I was talking with him. He said he was a surefire pro when he saw him on the mound. Another hard thrower with pretty good combination of pitches. So they're very high on him. He's a guy who, if he's healthy, I don't think he's going to do much this year in the minors, but starting next year, he's a guy who could be like a fast riser and could be someone, I don't want to say like next year or something in the bullpen or something like that, but by 2020, he's like a guy who could probably make an impact. So that's sort of what they're looking at there. And actually, today was a little bit surprising. It wasn't surprising that they went with college guys because that's kind of the norm these days in the first 10 rounds, but they drafted like 5 position players, which is a little rare for them. A couple guys they drafted last year but didn't sign, who went back to college. So yeah, it's just I think this was more. I think the top half of their draft today was probably the guys they're most interested in. The rest of the bottom 5 were probably guys they're going to save a little money on to help bolster the rest of the class. But just overall, I don't know. Pretty intriguing those first few picks.
Speaking of the draft, I mean, don't you think the Dodgers need to go after a first baseman? I mean, they got Bellinger there and Utelli, but they're kind of thin in that area. They can, fluctuate most of the guys, but don't you think that's something they can get less money for and go with someone, someone in the college circuit and getting someone at first base in that area, and then they can go after maybe the other guys in like the shortstops and left center field and those type of things?
I don't think so. I think you always take the best player available. For instance, like these guys aren't going to affect the 2018 team. When you look at your like organizational needs, like right now, they don't really. That could change a lot in 3 years. Like, so it's not something you look at now and say, well, we don't have a lot of first base and we need to draft that. Like, plus also it's first base. Like, not to denigrate the position, but you can move guys down to first base eventually from premium defensive positions. So it's not necessarily that. So I just think you always try to go with the best sort of available. You could, if you're close on a few guys, maybe one position fits better than the other, but I think just generally it's always best player available at this point.
What's a position that they're going to need to really make sure they get filled at some point down the line? What's something that maybe isn't so obvious now, but a position that they know they're going to need to fill long term?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It might be second base. Like this, so Logan Forsythe's a free agent at the end of the year. Chase Utley's 39. You talk about what's Seager going to be like when he gets back. Is he eventually going to be a guy who moves to third because of his size, and he can't really move next year because Justin Turner's still around? So maybe he plays second. I don't know, but like I look at second base and I think I don't know who's coming up. They don't have a ton of necessarily prospects for that position in terms of major league regulars, so that's maybe a position you look at. They're pretty well stocked at catcher in the minors. So yeah, and then Bellinger's pretty. He's a great first baseman. He can play the outfield, and he has. But like I think you try to keep him there if you can. So you can never have too many outfielders. So maybe outfield's in there as well. But I think second base is probably the one I'd pick.
Follow him on Twitter at Eric Steven, SB Nation True Blue LA blog. Eric, we appreciate the time tonight. Great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Anytime, guys.